82 days in total darkness during captivity as a POW in Afghanistan. That's where Marcus Reynolds learned to turn blindness into his greatest weapon. Now, he runs a successful martial arts academy in Phoenix, teaching others to see with more than just their eyes. When the Sinaloa Cartel tried to take over his neighborhood, they thought a blind instructor would be an easy target. They didn't realize they were dealing with the man who once single-handedly eliminated an entire Taliban cell without ever laying eyes on them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun painted Phoenix's streets in gold, but Marcus Reynolds hadn't seen a sunrise in 7 years. His world was one of sounds, smells, and sensations, the gentle whir of ceiling fans in his martial arts academy, the familiar scent of leather training mats, the subtle vibrations of footsteps through the hardwood floors. At 42, the former Army Ranger moved through his academy with a grace that made people forget he was blind. The Desert Shadow Academy occupied an old warehouse in South Phoenix, transformed into a state-of-the-art training facility where Marcus taught a unique blend of martial arts and situational awareness. His students ranged from law enforcement officers to civilians seeking self-defense skills, all drawn by the legend of the instructor who could detect an attack coming before his sighted students could see it. Master Reynolds, Tommy Garcia, his 14-year-old student, arrived early as usual. Marcus detected the slight shuffle in the boy's walk that indicated he was favoring his left leg again, probably from soccer practice. "Can we work on the nighttime awareness drills today?" Marcus allowed himself a small smile, remembering how he'd developed those drills during his rehabilitation at Walter Reed. "After regular class, Tommy. And tell your sister she doesn't have to wait in the car. The academy's always open to family." The boy's heartbeat quickened slightly, surprised that Marcus had detected Maria's presence outside. But that's what Marcus taught here. The world revealed itself in countless ways, beyond vision. The subtle changes in air pressure when someone entered a room, the microscopic sounds of muscles tensing before an attack, the faint echoes that painted a picture of spaces and movements. His enhanced awareness picked up the SUV before it arrived. Expensive tires, heavy vehicle, trying to move quietly but betraying its presence through subtle vibrations in the pavement. 3 men inside, based on the distribution of weight. They parked across the street, their whispered Spanish carrying, clearly to Marcus's trained ears. "Segundo piso, primera ventana." Second floor, first window. They were noting details about his building. "El gringo ciego no será problema." The blind American won't be a problem. Marcus continued his morning routine, checking the academy's perimeter through his network of subtle indicators. The pressure plates he'd installed beneath the sidewalk confirmed 3 men, all heavy, likely armed. The air sampling system detected gun oil and cordite. The thermal sensors indicated weapons recently fired, probably a warning shot at their previous stop. 7 years ago, during those 82 days of captivity in a Taliban prison, Marcus had learned that losing his sight didn't mean losing his ability to fight. In fact, his other senses had sharpened to supernatural levels, developing capabilities that his sighted self could never have imagined. The doctors called it neuroplasticity, his brain rewiring itself to process sensory information in revolutionary ways. His fellow rangers called it something else, evolution. The academy's front door chimed as his first regular class arrived. Local police officers here for their weekly training. Marcus noted the subtle tension in their movements, the way their hands stayed close to their weapons. "Trouble on Martinez Street this morning," Officer Sarah Chen reported quietly as she warmed up. 3 businesses hit with protection demands. Black SUV, cartel soldiers getting bold. Marcus nodded slightly, cataloguing this information against the patterns he'd been tracking for weeks. The Sinaloa cartel was moving north, using Phoenix's sprawling suburbs to establish new distribution routes. They started small, pressuring local businesses, offering protection, making examples of those who refused. First, it was the grocery stores on 7th Street, then the restaurants on Central. Now they were here. Through the floor, Marcus felt the SUV's occupants finally exit their vehicle. Their footsteps told him everything: military training but sloppy, favoring intimidation over discipline. The heaviest one had a slight drag in his right step, suggesting a recent knee injury. The second carried extra weight on his left side, probably a shoulder holster. The third moved with the careful precision of someone used to close-quarter combat. "Tommy," Marcus called quietly, "take everyone to the back training room. Officer Chen might want to call for backup. Things are about to get interesting." The front door chimed again, and Marcus turned to face his visitors with the same calm precision that had once made him one of the Army's most effective close combat instructors. The cartel soldiers paused, likely thrown off by his direct gaze. Most people didn't expect a blind man to face them so accurately. "Welcome to Desert Shadow Academy," Marcus said in perfect Spanish, noting how their heartbeats jumped at the unexpected greeting. "I'm afraid we're in the middle of a class, but I'm happy to discuss enrollment options." Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent 15 years as an Army Ranger, including those 82 days in darkness, without learning one crucial lesson: sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one you don't think can see you coming. The 3 cartel soldiers spread out in the academy's entrance, their movements betraying their growing unease. Marcus could sense their confusion. Most targets showed fear when confronted by armed men, but the blind instructor stood perfectly calm, head slightly tilted as though listening to something beyond their perception. The leader, the one with the knee injury, stepped forward with deliberate heaviness, attempting to intimidate through presence alone. "Senor Reynolds," the man's voice carried forced casualness, "I am Diego Ramirez. My associates and I represent a business consortium interested in community security. We've been visiting local establishments, offering our services." The subtle scratch of a pen on paper caught Marcus's attention. One of the other men was noting details about the academy's layout, counting windows, marking security cameras. Marcus maintained his relaxed posture, while his other senses painted a precise picture of the situation. The third man had moved toward the training equipment, his footsteps revealing a tactical approach, establishing angles, identifying potential weapons. These weren't ordinary thugs. They had military or paramilitary training, though their discipline had grown sloppy with overconfidence. "South Phoenix has its challenges," Ramirez continued, his weight shifting as he gestured around the academy. "Small businesses like yours need protection. Insurance rates are high. Accidents happen. We can help ensure your operation runs smoothly." The threat hung in the air like smoke, but beneath it, Marcus detected something else: the faint tremor in Ramirez's voice betraying uncertainty. The blind instructor's calm was unsettling them. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus tracked Tommy and the others, moving to the secure back room, followed Officer Chen's careful positioning near the emergency exit. His students were safe, which meant he could focus entirely on the 3 men attempting to threaten him. 7 years of blindness had taught Marcus to transform any space into his advantage. Every echo, every surface, every subtle current of air becoming part of his awareness. "That's a generous offer," Marcus replied, moving with careful precision toward the training mat area. His motion appeared casual, but it positioned him exactly where he needed to be. "But I have extensive experience with security. Former Army Ranger." He noted how their postures stiffened at this information, their breathing patterns changing slightly. These days, I prefer teaching others to protect themselves. The second man, the one with the shoulder holster, laughed nervously. No disrespect, senor, but times change. A blind instructor, alone. He gestured at his own eyes, forgetting momentarily that Marcus couldn't see the motion. The neighborhood is getting dangerous. You need our help. Marcus allowed himself a small smile, remembering similar conversations from his time in Afghanistan. Enemy combatants always underestimated the power of enhanced senses, never understanding that true awareness went far beyond vision. He could hear the man's finger tapping his holstered weapon, smell the distinctive gunpowder residue from recent target practice, feel the subtle shifts in air pressure as they unconsciously prepared for violence. "You're right about one thing," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the calm precision that had once made him the Army's most effective close-quarters combat instructor. "Times do change. 7 years ago I could only fight what I could see. Now—" He turned his head slightly, addressing each man's exact position with unnerving accuracy. "Now I sense everything." Ramirez's patience broke first, his injured knee betraying his lunge forward. "Listen carefully, Ciego," he spat, reaching for Marcus's shirt. "This isn't a request. You either accept our protection or—" The attack never landed. Marcus moved with liquid grace, years of training flowing through, muscle memory enhanced by supernatural awareness. One precise strike to Ramirez's injured knee dropped him instantly. The second man reached for his weapon, but found himself disarmed before his fingers touched the grip. Marcus's movements guided by the whisper of shifting fabric and the subtle change in air pressure that preceded every attack. The third man, the one with actual combat training, managed to launch a professional assault, a combination that would have been lethal against a sighted opponent. But Marcus existed in a world beyond sight, where every motion announced itself. Through 1,000 tiny tells, he flowed around the attacks like water, using his attacker's momentum and positioning to neutralize the threat with clinical efficiency. Within seconds, all 3 cartel soldiers lay groaning on the training mats, their weapons secured, their confidence shattered. Marcus stood among them with the same calm precision he displayed while teaching, not a hair out of place. Through the floor, he felt Officer Chen approaching, her weapon drawn but pointed downward. She'd witnessed enough to know the situation was under control. "I'll need to file a report," she said professionally. But Marcus detected the admiration in her voice. "Self-defense, 3 armed suspects neutralized without serious injury. Impressive work, Master Reynolds." "They'll be back," Marcus replied quietly, noting how the defeated men's breathing patterns revealed their growing fear. They'd come expecting to intimidate a blind instructor. Instead, they'd encountered something they didn't understand. With more men, better planning, the cartel won't accept this kind of failure. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent 82 days in a Taliban prison learning to see without eyes, just to let criminals threaten his community. They'd wanted to know what a blind instructor was capable of. Now they knew. But they hadn't learned the most important lesson yet. Sometimes the deadliest predator is the one who doesn't need to see you to hunt you. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The aftermath of the confrontation rippled through South Phoenix like a stone dropped in still water. Marcus spent the evening conducting his usual security checks of the academy, his enhanced senses detecting subtle changes in the neighborhood's rhythm. More vehicles cruising past with enforced casualness, conversations dropping to whispers. When people passed his building, the slight increase in police patrols, suggesting Officer Chen had quietly spread the word about the morning's events. Tommy had insisted on staying late to help clean the training mats, his young voice carrying both excitement and concern. "Those men?" he asked while working, his heartbeat revealing his anxiety. They're Cartel, aren't they? Like the ones who threatened my uncle's restaurant last week? The boy's sister, Maria, had finally come inside, her presence a quiet shadow near the academy's entrance, watching her brother with protective intensity. Marcus paused in his work, turning to face the siblings with his characteristic precision. The Garcia children had been among his first students when he opened the academy 3 years ago, drawn by their father's respect for veterans and their mother's insistence on self-defense training. Now, they were unwittingly caught in the expanding conflict between the cartel and the community they sought to control. "Your uncle made the right choice," Marcus said carefully, noting how both children's breathing patterns shifted at the mention of their relative. Sometimes surviving means knowing when to step back, but sometimes, he adjusted the training dummy with deliberate purpose, it means knowing when to stand your ground. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this story of courage and resilience, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. Tomorrow's episode about a former bomb disposal expert who became a high-stakes poker player will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to subscribe. Story continues. The Academy's security system, a sophisticated network of pressure sensors and audio monitors, detected the black SUV's return just after sunset. This time, they didn't stop. Just a slow drive-by, multiple occupants conducting surveillance. Marcus tracked their passage through the subtle vibrations in the building's foundation, noting the vehicle's increased weight, suggesting more occupants, probably armed. "They're cataloging security cameras," Officer Chen observed, from her position near the window. She'd stopped by after her shift, ostensibly to schedule additional training sessions, but Marcus detected the extra weight of tactical gear in her equipment bag. Setting up observation posts across the street, professional work. Marcus moved through his evening routine with practiced efficiency, each motion serving multiple purposes, checking security measures while appearing to simply close for the night. His years in special operations had taught him the value of appearing unremarkable, and blindness had only enhanced his ability to operate unnoticed. People saw what they expected, a disabled veteran running a small business, not a highly trained operator who had transformed his condition into an advantage. 6 new cameras installed on neighboring buildings, he noted quietly, his heightened senses detecting the subtle electronic hum. They're establishing a surveillance network. The cartel was moving with unexpected sophistication, suggesting they had access to professional security contractors. This wasn't just about local protection rackets anymore. They were treating his academy as a serious operation, requiring detailed intelligence gathering. Sarah Chen's sharp intake of breath confirmed his assessment. "They're not just watching you," she said, her voice carrying the professional concern of a law enforcement officer who understood patterns of escalation. "They're studying everyone who comes in and out, students, families, suppliers." The implications hung in the air like storm clouds. The cartel was identifying pressure points, mapping relationships, preparing to exploit any vulnerability they could find. Marcus had seen similar tactics in Afghanistan, insurgents targeting not just military units but support networks, using civilian connections as leverage. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus detected Tommy and Maria's father arriving. To pick them up, his familiar gait carrying unusual tension. "Senor Reynolds," Miguel Garcia's voice was pitched low, meant only for Marcus's enhanced hearing. "3 more businesses on our street received visits today. The bakery, the hardware store, my brother's restaurant again. They're tightening the noose." Marcus absorbed this information while maintaining his calm exterior. The cartel was following a classic pattern of territorial expansion, systematic pressure applied through escalating threats, isolating resistance while establishing dominance through fear, but they'd made a critical miscalculation in targeting his academy. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in total darkness, learning to transform blindness into an asset, just to watch criminals destroy his community. During his captivity, he'd discovered that true strength often came from perceived weakness, that limitations could become advantages when properly understood. The cartel saw a blind instructor as an easy target, never considering that his enhanced senses made him more dangerous than any sighted opponent. "Take the kids home through the back entrance," Marcus instructed Miguel quietly, his heightened awareness already detecting more cartel vehicles establishing positions in the neighborhood. "Keep them inside tomorrow. Things are about to escalate." Because the cartel was about to learn what the Taliban had discovered 7 years ago. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one who has learned to hunt in darkness. Dawn painted Phoenix's skyline in shades Marcus Reynolds could no longer see, but his morning perimeter check revealed the night's developments with crystal clarity. His enhanced senses detected new surveillance equipment installed across 3 neighboring buildings, the subtle electronic signatures humming like beacons to his trained awareness. The cartel had been busy while the neighborhood slept, establishing a sophisticated monitoring network that would have impressed his former special operations commanders. Inside the academy, Marcus moved through his morning routine with deliberate precision, each action serving multiple purposes. As he arranged training equipment, his bare feet registered minute vibrations through the hardwood floors, 4 men maintaining observation positions across the street, their attempts at casual loitering betrayed by their military-grade communications equipment and the distinct weight distribution of concealed weapons. "They're not even trying to be subtle anymore," Sarah Chen observed, arriving early for her usual training session. Her police-issue boots carried the residue of fresh asphalt, suggesting she'd detoured through the back alleys to assess the cartel's positions. 2 more businesses hit last night. The Rivera family's grocery store had a mysterious electrical fire. Miguel Garcia's brother finally signed over his restaurant. Marcus absorbed this information while adjusting the academy's environmental controls. The ventilation system, modified with sophisticated sensors, detected traces of gun oil and explosives, residue growing stronger in the neighborhood. The cartel wasn't just watching anymore, they were moving in equipment, preparing for something bigger. "Teresa Rivera's daughter Emma is in my afternoon youth class," Marcus noted, his voice carrying carefully controlled concern. The girl showed remarkable potential, already developing the heightened awareness he tried to instill in all his students. "How bad was the damage?" "Bad enough to send a message," Sarah replied, her tactical gear rustling as she began her warm-up. "Routine, insurance won't cover it. Fire investigators' report will probably get lost in the system. The cartel's influence reaches deeper than we thought." A familiar heartbeat approached the academy's entrance, Tommy Garcia arriving for his morning training session. But something was wrong. The boy's usual energetic stride carried a slight hesitation, and his sister Maria's protective presence was missing. Through the floor, Marcus detected subtle changes in Tommy's gait, suggesting he'd been running recently, his breathing patterns indicating stress. "They were waiting outside our house this morning," Tommy reported quietly as he entered, his voice carrying forced calm that couldn't hide his elevated pulse rate. 2 men in a black SUV. They followed Maria's school bus. "Dad says we shouldn't come to training anymore, but—" The boy's voice cracked slightly. "But I had to tell you." Marcus moved with fluid grace to the academy's security console, his fingers finding the correct controls through muscle memory. The system confirmed his suspicions. Cartel surveillance teams had significantly expanded their operation overnight. They weren't just monitoring the academy anymore. They were tracking his students, mapping connections, identifying pressure points. "Where's your father now?" Marcus asked, his enhanced hearing already detecting more cartel vehicles entering the neighborhood. The sound of their engines, the weight distribution of their occupants, the subtle electronic signatures of their communications equipment, all painted a clear picture of escalating presence. At the restaurant, meeting with some men. Tommy's heart rate spiked as he shared this information. They said it was about updating their security systems, but Dad looked scared, like when those men visited Uncle Roberto before the fire. Word is, they're more cooperative with community business interests. Marcus absorbed this information while continuing his evening security routine, his fingers detecting minute changes in the academy's infrastructure. The cartel's attempted cyber intrusion had failed, but it revealed their evolving strategy. They were moving beyond simple intimidation, employing professionals like Vega to coordinate sophisticated operations. They're isolating us systematically, Marcus observed, his bare feet registering increased vehicle traffic outside. More cartel surveillance teams establishing positions. Corrupting law enforcement. Pressuring business owners. Identifying vulnerabilities in the community's support network. Colonel Vega's presence suggests they're treating this as a military operation now. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus detected Miguel Garcia approaching the academy's back entrance. The restaurant owner's usual confident stride carried new tension, and he wasn't alone. 2 more sets of footsteps accompanied him. Community business owners based on their familiar gaits. Marcus had learned to recognize most neighborhood residents by their unique walking patterns, a skill that had saved lives during his time in Afghanistan. Senor Reynolds, Miguel's voice carried barely controlled anger as he entered with his companions. They visited every business on the block today. Professional men in expensive suits talking about community improvement projects and security partnerships. But behind them, he paused, collecting himself. Behind them were men with dead eyes and heavy jackets, making sure we understood the real message. The other business owners shared similar stories. The cartel was moving with coordinated precision, applying pressure from multiple angles. Legal threats, building code violations, mysterious equipment malfunctions, all backed by the implicit threat of violence. They were systematically dismantling the community's resistance, using fear and bureaucracy as weapons. The Rivera family's insurance claim was denied this morning, Sarah added, her police training evident in her detailed reporting. Fire investigators' report cited inconclusive evidence of arson, despite 3 witnesses seeing men leaving the scene, banks threatening to foreclose on their property. Word is, there's already a buyer interested, a development company with cartel connections. Marcus moved through the academy with practiced efficiency, his other senses painting a detailed picture of the tactical situation. More surveillance equipment had appeared in neighboring buildings, and cartel vehicles maintained regular patrols through the area. They were establishing a presence, marking territory, preparing for something bigger. "They're watching my daughter's school," Miguel continued, his heartbeat revealing deep parental fear. Maria saw the same black SUV that followed Tommy yesterday. The driver was taking pictures of children during recess. The school administration says they can't restrict public parking on city streets. The implications hung in the air, like storm clouds. The cartel was exploiting every possible pressure point, using children's safety to leverage compliance from resistant parents. It was a tactic Marcus had seen before during his time hunting insurgent networks in Afghanistan. Target the community's most vulnerable members, make examples of those who resist, break the will to fight before escalating to direct violence. What Colonel Vega offered wasn't just a threat, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the calm precision that had once guided special operations teams through combat zones. It was a warning They're done playing games with local enforcers. They're bringing in professionals, people with military training and tactical experience, the kind of operators who understand how to break a community's spirit. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus detected Tommy and Maria Garcia approaching the academy's secured back entrance. The siblings moved with the careful awareness he'd trained into them, but their elevated heart rates betrayed their anxiety. More cartel vehicles had appeared in the neighborhood, their occupants maintaining professional surveillance patterns. "They're not just watching anymore," Tommy reported as he entered, his young voice carrying forced calm. "They're following everyone who comes to training." Marcus absorbed this information while his other senses continued mapping the tactical situation developing outside. 3 more SUVs had arrived, their occupants maintaining professional spacing as they established new observation posts. The cartel was systematically isolating the academy, cutting off potential support while gathering intelligence for their next move. "Officer Chen," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the calm precision that had once guided special operations. "Teams through combat zones. Would you escort Tommy home? Take the route we discussed." The hidden message was clear. Use the secure path they'd established for emergencies, avoiding cartel surveillance. Sarah understood immediately, her tactical training recognizing the underlying strategy. "Come on, Tommy. Let's work on those situational awareness drills your instructor's been teaching, practical application time." And after they left, Marcus continued his morning preparations with mechanical efficiency, but his heightened senses remained focused on the growing threat outside. The cartel was escalating systematically, following a professional playbook he recognized from his military days. They were establishing dominance through calculated pressure, using fear and isolation to break resistance. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. In targeting his students, in threatening the community he'd sworn to protect, they'd given him a reason to access skills he'd hoped to leave in the past. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in a Taliban prison learning to see through darkness, just to watch criminals tear apart the life he'd built. His fingers traced the hidden compartment beneath the training mats, where specialized equipment remained carefully maintained, tools and technologies he'd adapted for his unique capabilities after losing his sight. The cartel thought they were dealing with a disabled veteran running a small martial arts academy. They were about to learn what his Taliban captors had discovered 7 years ago. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who has learned to weaponize their supposed weakness. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to Desert Shadow Academy. Marcus detected the approaching vehicle long before it arrived. An expensive European sedan with diplomatic plates, its engine purring with precision maintenance. The passengers' footsteps carried military bearing, but with an underlying arrogance that set Marcus's senses on high alert. This wasn't another cartel soldier. This was someone accustomed to authority. "Impressive operation you have here, Sergeant Reynolds," the man announced as he entered, his Spanish accent cultured, his choice of Marcus's former military rank deliberately pointed. "Though perhaps a bit ambitious for someone in your condition." And the subtle pause carried calculated insult, testing for reaction. "Colonel Eduardo Vega," Marcus replied calmly, noting how the man's heartbeat jumped at being identified. "Former Spanish Special Operations, now working as a security consultant. Your reputation precedes you." Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus detected 2 more men establishing positions outside, professional security, likely former military, given their disciplined movement patterns. Vega's expensive shoes clicked against the hardwood as he moved through the academy, studying the layout with professional assessment. "You're well informed for a local martial arts instructor. Then again, you were more than just a ranger, weren't you? Your time with Special Operations Group in Afghanistan left quite an impression, particularly those last 82 days. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Marcus maintained his relaxed posture, but his enhanced senses tracked every micro-movement, every subtle shift in air pressure that might precede action. Vega was probing, testing, looking for weaknesses in the blind instructor's composed exterior. "Times change, Colonel," Marcus replied evenly, moving with careful precision to adjust a training dummy. "These days I prefer teaching others to protect themselves. Your employers seem to have a different philosophy about community protection." Vega's laugh carried genuine amusement tinged with something darker. "Come now, Sergeant. We both know the Sinaloa cartel doesn't employ me directly. I merely consult on security matters, like the incident yesterday with Mr. Ramirez and his associates. Most impressive work, by the way, taking down 3 armed men without sight. It's almost unbelievable." The conversation carried layers of meaning beneath its surface courtesy. Through his heightened awareness, Marcus detected subtle changes. In the building's electronic environment, someone was attempting to hack his security systems, probably from one of the surveillance vehicles outside. The cartel was learning, adapting their approach from brute force to sophisticated technological warfare. "Though I have to wonder," Vega continued, his footsteps carrying him in a careful circle around Marcus, "what happens when we escalate beyond simple intimidation? The Rivera family's grocery store was unfortunate, but necessary. Sometimes examples must be made. Your students' families, your police officer friends, they all have similar vulnerabilities. Fire marshals can be quite strict about safety codes in martial arts academies." Marcus allowed himself a small smile, one that had once made Taliban commanders nervous. "Interesting choice, Colonel. Most people, when they learn about my military background, assume the blindness makes me less dangerous. You seem to think it makes me more so." "The reports from Afghanistan were quite detailed," Vega replied, his voice carrying professional respect beneath its threat. "How you escaped captivity, what happened to your captors, 82 days in darkness, learning to see without eyes. The Taliban still tell stories about the American ghost who hunted them through their own caves, but that was years ago. Now you have students to protect, a community to consider." The subtle click of a camera shutter caught Marcus's attention. Someone photographing the academy from across the street, documenting potential targets. Through the floor, he detected Tommy Garcia approaching the building, then stopping abruptly as Vega's security team intercepted him. The boy's elevated heart rate carried clearly to Marcus's enhanced hearing. "You're right about one thing, Colonel," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the deadly calm that had once made him Special Operations' most effective close-quarters combat instructor. "I do have people to protect, which means I can't afford to be subtle anymore." In one fluid motion, Marcus activated the Academy's upgraded environmental systems. The sophisticated ventilation controls he'd installed immediately began cycling the air, eliminating the surveillance equipment's electronic signatures. Outside, he detected Vega's security team, suddenly losing communications with their support vehicles. "Impressive," Vega observed, but Marcus detected the first trace of uncertainty in his tone. "Technical countermeasures suggest preparation, almost like you were expecting this level of confrontation." "No, Colonel," Marcus replied, moving with lethal grace to secure the Academy's entrance. "I was counting on it, because you've made one critical mistake. You think my blindness is a limitation to work around. You haven't realized it's what makes me dangerous, because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity without learning essential truths about darkness, how it could be a weapon, a shield, an advantage. The cartel was about to discover what his captors had learned too late, and done that sometimes the most lethal predator is the one who has mastered the darkness they fear. In the tense aftermath of Colonel Vega's visit, Desert Shadow Academy hummed with subtle energy that only Marcus could detect. His enhanced senses mapped every electronic signal, every vibration, every whispered conversation from the cartel's surveillance teams outside. They had switched to more sophisticated equipment, but to Marcus, their digital signatures sang like beacons in the darkness he had learned to navigate so effectively. Officer Sarah Chen arrived as sunset painted shadows across Phoenix's streets, her tactical gear suggesting she'd come straight from SWAT training. "Just got word from the precinct," she reported, her voice pitched low for Marcus's sensitive hearing. "3 more officers transferred out of our district this morning. Departments rotating in new personnel from the north side." Their movement patterns betrayed growing uncertainty. Professional operators, suddenly aware they were being hunted by something they couldn't see or understand. "Sierra 2 reports movement at the Academy," a cartel radio transmitted, the operator's voice carrying forced calm. "Target's location confirmed inside the building. Utwim attained the tree." Marcus smiled again, knowing they were detecting the sophisticated holographic systems he'd installed. Technology developed for military applications, now serving to deceive observers who relied too heavily on visual information. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus tracked Colonel Vega's response. The former Special Operations officer had recognized the pattern of attacks, understanding he faced a professionally trained operator. But Vega's tactical adjustments revealed his crucial weakness. He was fighting according to conventional military doctrine, expecting an opponent who shared his reliance on visual data. "They're consolidating around the command post," Sarah reported, her police training evident in her precise observations. "Multiple vehicles arriving. Looks like they're preparing for a direct confrontation." Her voice carried concern, tinged with professional respect. "They still think you're in the Academy. They haven't figured out how you're moving through their perimeter." Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just learning to cope with blindness. He'd transformed his condition into an advantage, developing capabilities that went beyond normal human limitations. His other senses had evolved to process information in ways that even his special operations training hadn't prepared him for. "Remember what you told me about darkness?" Sarah asked quietly, monitoring the cartel's growing confusion through police channels. "During my first night training session?" "Darkness isn't a limitation," Marcus replied, moving with deadly purpose toward his next target. "It's an equalizer. Most people fear it because they rely too heavily on their eyes. But when you learn to see with all your senses—" He paused, detecting 3 more cartel operators attempting to establish a new observation position. "That's when you discover what true awareness means. Because Colonel Vega and his professional operators were about to learn what the Taliban had discovered 7 years ago. In a world of darkness, the advantage belongs to those who have learned to hunt without sight, and Marcus Reynolds had spent 82 days becoming something his enemies had never encountered before, a ghost who could track them by heartbeat alone. Colonel Vega's response came swiftly as dawn approached. Marcus detected the arrival of multiple tactical teams through his enhanced awareness, professional operators moving with military precision, their equipment and communications suggesting extensive combat experience. The cartel was escalating, bringing in serious resources to counter what they now recognized as a significant threat. 4 more vehicles just entered the perimeter, Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel, her position at the Academy providing crucial tactical intelligence. Different from the usual cartel soldiers, these guys move like private military contractors, high-end gear, coordinated movements. They're setting up a tactical operations center in the abandoned warehouse on Martinez Street. Marcus processed this information while maintaining his ghost-like progress through the neighborhood. His bare feet detected subtle vibrations through the ground, painting a detailed picture of the opposition's deployment. 28 new operators, their movement. Patterns suggesting former military training, probably South American Special Forces, based on their tactical doctrine. "They're establishing a cordon," Marcus observed, his enhanced senses tracking multiple teams moving into position. "Professional containment protocols. They think they can trap me using standard military tactics." A slight smile crossed his face, one that would have been familiar to his former special operations teammates. They still haven't understood what they're dealing with. Through his sophisticated sensor network, Marcus detected Colonel Vega coordinating the operation from his command post. The former Spanish special operations officer had adapted his approach, implementing counterinsurgency tactics designed to isolate and eliminate asymmetric threats. But his strategy revealed a crucial weakness. He was fighting according to conventional military doctrine, expecting an opponent who shared his limitations. "They're targeting our support network," Sarah reported, her police training evident. In her detailed analysis, 2 teams just moved against the safe houses where we evacuated families. Taking pictures, making notes. Some men visited Dad's restaurant again, asked lots of questions about you, Master Reynolds, about Afghanistan. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in total darkness, learning to transform blindness into an advantage just to watch criminals destroy everything he'd built. The cartel was escalating, bringing in professional operators like Vega, treating his academy as a serious military target. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought they were dealing with a disabled veteran running a small martial arts school. They hadn't realized they were facing someone who had learned to turn darkness itself into a weapon. Someone who had survived 82 days of Taliban captivity by developing senses and skills that went far beyond normal human limitations. "It's time," Marcus said finally, his voice carrying deadly certainty. "They want to treat this like a military operation? Fine, let's show them what a real ghost can do in the dark." Night had settled over Phoenix when Marcus began his operation. The Academy's sophisticated sensor network painted a detailed picture of the cartel's surveillance operation. 23 men in total, maintaining professional observation posts across 8 locations. Colonel Vega had established a command center in a vacant office building 2 blocks away, the electronic signatures of his communications equipment betraying its position to Marcus's enhanced senses. "You're sure about this?" Officer Sarah. Jen asked quietly, helping Marcus prepare specialized equipment he'd maintained but hoped never to use again. Her tactical training recognized the quality of the gear, military-grade electronics modified for unique applications, communication systems designed to work without visual interfaces, sensors that extended human perception beyond normal limits. "They're expecting a defensive response," Marcus replied, his fingers checking connections with practiced efficiency. A blind instructor fortifying his academy, trying to protect his students. They're not prepared for someone who can turn their surveillance against them. His voice carried the calm precision that had once made him one of Special Operations' most effective ghost operators. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus tracked the cartel's patrol patterns. They'd established regular rotations, maintaining professional coverage of key approaches to the academy. But their focus on visual observation revealed their fundamental misunderstanding. In Marcus's world of enhanced senses, their movements wrote detailed intelligence reports with every footstep. "Miguel Garcia's restaurant closes in 20 minutes, Sarah reported, checking her tactical watch. His brother Roberto already evacuated his family to the safe house we arranged. The Rivera family is ready to move on your signal." The community had mobilized with quiet efficiency, following contingency plans Marcus had helped develop over months of preparation. Marcus allowed himself a small smile, one that would have been familiar to his former special operations teammates. Colonel Vega thinks he's dealing with a retired veteran trying to protect a small business. He hasn't realized he's facing someone who spent 82 days learning to hunt in absolute darkness. The first phase of his operation began precisely at midnight. Marcus moved through the shadows with liquid grace, his other senses creating a detailed map of his environment. The cartel's first observation post never detected his approach. Two operators, maintaining professional surveillance protocols, found themselves neutralized with surgical precision. Pressure point strikes, leaving them unconscious before they could raise alarms. Command post to Sierra 3, report status. Marcus heard their radio crackle, Vega's cultured voice carrying subtle tension. But Sierra 3's communications equipment had already been disabled, its electronic signature eliminated from Marcus's sensory landscape. The second and third observation posts fell with similar efficiency. Marcus moved like a ghost through his own neighborhood, using intimate knowledge of the terrain and his enhanced perception to devastating effect. Each neutralized team increased the cartel's confusion, their professional discipline beginning to crack as operators lost contact with their colleagues. They're shifting personnel to cover gaps, Sarah observed through their secure communication link, monitoring police frequencies from her position at the academy. Getting sloppy with their patterns, Vega's calling in reinforcements, but they're at least 30 minutes out. Marcus detected the change in their tactical approach. The cartel's remaining surveillance teams were clustering together, abandoning their carefully planned coverage for mutual protection. 3 more approaching Miguel Garcia's restaurant. They're trying to flush you out by threatening civilians. Marcus's enhanced hearing picked up scattered conversations among the cartel's new operators. Their professional confidence had been shaken by the night's events. 8 surveillance teams neutralized without raising alarms, their sophisticated equipment disabled by an opponent they couldn't detect or track. Now they moved in groups, maintaining mutual support, their heartbeats betraying growing unease. "How many did you say you took down in those caves?" Gisera asked quietly, monitoring the cartel's communications through intercepted radio traffic. "During those 82 days in Afghanistan." 27, Marcus replied, his voice carrying the deadly calm that had earned him his reputation. "But that was different. I was learning then, just beginning to understand how to use my other senses. Now." He paused, detecting 3 of Vega's operators attempting to establish a new observation post. "Now I've had 7 years to perfect those skills." The cartel's tactical teams were implementing textbook procedures for urban combat operations. They maintained overlapping fields of fire, established secure communications networks, deployed sophisticated surveillance equipment. But their reliance on visual data and traditional military doctrine made them vulnerable to an opponent who operated beyond normal human limitations. "They're searching the academy," Sarah reported, her voice carrying professional concern. 2 teams, full tactical gear. They found the training equipment you modified, the sensory enhancement systems. Vega's realizing this isn't just about martial arts instruction. Marcus moved with liquid grace through the shadows, his other senses creating a detailed map of the battlefield. The cartel's operators were professional, disciplined, deadly, but they were fighting blind in more ways than one. They couldn't understand how he tracked their heartbeats through walls, detected their positions from subtle air currents, read their tactics through ground vibrations. "Contact Team Echo, report status." Vega's cultured voice carried clearly through intercepted communications. But Echo Team had already been neutralized, their sophisticated equipment disabled, their operators unconscious before they could raise alarms. The former Spanish colonel was learning an expensive lesson about underestimating opponents. "They're adapting their tactics," Sarah observed, monitoring the cartel's growing confusion through multiple channels. switching to infrared, motion, sensors, trying to counter your advantages. But they still don't understand, do they? They think technology can level the playing field. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just surviving. He'd evolved, developed capabilities that went beyond normal human perception. His other senses had transformed through necessity and training, creating awareness that technology couldn't match or counter. "Remember what you taught me about fear?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying quiet understanding. "During those night training sessions, when I thought being blind was a disadvantage." "Fear comes from uncertainty," Marcus replied, moving with deadly purpose toward his next target. "From not understanding what you're facing. The cartel's professional operators are experienced, well-equipped, trained for almost any tactical situation." He paused, detecting Vega's command team repositioning as reports of neutralized units continued to flow in. But they've never faced someone who can hunt them through their own darkness. Because Colonel Vega and his tactical teams were about to learn what Marcus had discovered during those 82 days in Afghanistan. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one who has mastered the fears that limit others. And Marcus Reynolds had spent 7 years turning his supposed disability into something his enemies couldn't comprehend. Perfect awareness in a world of shadows. The situation reached critical mass as Phoenix's first light painted shadows across the city streets. Marcus's enhanced senses detected a significant shift in the cartel's tactical positioning. Their surveillance teams had pulled back, replaced by something more concerning. Through the subtle vibrations in the ground and the distinct electronic signatures of military-grade communications equipment, he counted 6 new teams establishing positions around the neighborhood. These weren't ordinary cartel soldiers. Their movement patterns suggested professional military training. "They're setting up a tactical operations grid," Sarah Chen observed from her position near the Academy's reinforced windows. Her police training helped her recognize the methodical way the new teams were deploying. Multiple observation points, overlapping fields of fire. This is military-grade stuff, Marcus, way beyond usual cartel operations. Marcus moved through his morning routine with deliberate precision, each motion serving multiple purposes as his other senses mapped the evolving, tactical situation. The sophisticated sensor network he'd installed throughout the neighborhood painted a detailed picture of the opposition's capabilities: high-end surveillance equipment, encrypted communications, thermal imaging systems. Colonel Vega was implementing a professional containment strategy. "They're targeting pressure points," Marcus noted, detecting increased activity around key locations. 2 teams monitoring Miguel Garcia's restaurant, another watching the school routes. They're identifying ways to leverage the community against us. His bare feet registered subtle changes in ground vibrations as more vehicles arrived, carrying equipment that hummed with electronic signatures he recognized from his military days. Through the Academy's walls, Marcus detected Tommy and Maria Garcia approaching from the back alley, their heartbeats elevated but steady. He'd trained the siblings well. They moved with careful awareness, following indirect routes to avoid surveillance. But something was wrong. The subtle hesitation in Tommy's usually confident stride suggested urgency. "Master Reynolds," Tommy reported as they entered through the secure back entrance, his young voice carrying controlled tension. "They visited our house this morning. Professional guys, not like the usual cartel soldiers. They knew things about our family, about the academy, about your time in Afghanistan." The boy's heart rate spiked as he continued. "They said accidents happen to students who train with the wrong instructors." Marcus absorbed this information while his enhanced senses continued tracking movement patterns outside. Colonel Vega was implementing a sophisticated strategy using psychological pressure alongside tactical positioning. The cartel was done with simple intimidation. They were moving to isolate and eliminate what they now recognized as a serious threat. "They're sampling environmental data," Marcus observed, detecting new electronic signatures around the perimeter. "Atmospheric sensors, acoustic monitoring, infrared mapping. They're trying to understand how I operate." A slight smile crossed his face, one that would have been familiar to his former special operations teammates. "They still think technology can counter what I've become." Sarah's tactical gear rustled as she checked her weapons. Like many of Marcus's students, she'd learned to trust his enhanced perception, to understand that his blindness had evolved into something beyond normal human capabilities. "How many?" she asked quietly, her police training focusing on practical tactical concerns. 32 operators total," Marcus replied, his other senses painting a precise picture of the opposition's. "Deployment. Split into 8 tactical teams, with a mobile command element coordinating from 2 blocks east. Professional equipment, military training, but..." He paused, detecting a subtle flaw in their positioning. "They're still thinking in terms of visual warfare. They haven't grasped what they're really facing." Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just learning to cope with blindness. He'd transformed his condition into an advantage, developing capabilities that went far beyond what his enemies could comprehend. While Colonel Vega's teams relied on technology and traditional military doctrine, Marcus had learned to perceive the world in ways their equipment couldn't match. "They're establishing a command center in the abandoned warehouse," Sarah reported, monitoring police frequencies through her tactical radio. "Multiple vehicles, heavy equipment. Looks like they're settling in for an extended operation." Her voice carried professional concern tinged with grim anticipation. "This is going to escalate, isn't it?" Marcus moved with fluid grace to the Academy's security console, his fingers finding the correct controls through muscle memory. The sophisticated systems he'd installed weren't just for defense. They were tools specifically designed for someone who had learned to fight without sight. "They want to play tactical games?" His voice carried the deadly calm that had once made him one of Special Operations' most effective operators. "Let's show them what real darkness feels like." The first phase of his counter-offensive began. With subtle precision, electronic signatures around the perimeter began failing as specialized jamming systems activated. The Cartel's sophisticated surveillance equipment, designed to counter normal tactical threats, proved useless against an opponent who didn't rely on visual data. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus detected growing confusion in their tactical teams as their technology advantages evaporated. "Remember what you learned in night training?" Marcus asked Sarah as he prepared for direct action. "About the difference between seeing and perceiving?" His hands moved with practiced efficiency over his specialized equipment, tools modified for an operator who had transformed blindness into a tactical advantage. "That most people are effectively blind already," Sarah replied, understanding, dawning in her voice, "because they rely too much on their eyes, never developing their other senses." She checked her tactical gear one final time, ready to provide support for whatever Marcus had planned. "They think they're hunting you, don't they? But they're the ones walking blind." Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent 7 years running a martial arts academy just to watch criminals destroy his community. The cartel had escalated the situation, bringing in professional operators and military-grade equipment. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought they were dealing with a disabled veteran trying to protect his business. They hadn't realized they were facing someone who had learned to turn darkness itself into a weapon. "Stay with the kids," Marcus instructed as he moved toward the academy's rear exit. "Coordinate with Officer Chen on emergency protocols if needed. It's time to remind Colonel Vega why some predators are best left undisturbed." His voice carried the quiet certainty of someone who had mastered fears that would limit others. They want to make this a tactical operation? Fine. Let's show them what a real ghost can do. The morning sun cast long shadows across Phoenix's streets as Colonel Vega coordinated his response to the night's events. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus detected a significant shift in the tactical situation. 3 more vehicles had arrived at the cartel's command center, their distinctive engine signatures suggesting armored SUVs. The electronic emissions from their communications equipment indicated military-grade tactical systems far beyond standard cartel operations. "They've brought in something new," Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel, her position providing crucial surveillance of the cartel's movements. 2 teams just deployed from the command center. Different equipment, different movement patterns. These aren't Vega's regular operators. Her tactical training helped her recognize the subtle differences in their approach. They're moving like Tier 1 contractors. Marcus absorbed this information while his other senses continued mapping the evolving battlefield. The new teams moved with predatory precision, their footsteps revealing extensive combat experience. Through the subtle vibrations in the ground, he detected sophisticated sensor packages being deployed, equipment designed to counter enhanced human capabilities. "They're using multi-spectrum detection systems," Marcus observed, his heightened awareness picking up the distinctive electronic signatures. Thermal imaging, acoustic monitoring, even pheromone detection. Someone's been studying the reports from Afghanistan. A slight smile crossed his face as he detected a crucial flaw in their approach. They still think technology can replace true perception. Through the academy's walls, Marcus tracked Tommy Garcia's approach. The boy had insisted on maintaining his regular training schedule, refusing to show fear despite the cartel's escalating presence. But something was different today. Tommy's heartbeat carried unusual tension, and he wasn't alone. 2 more students accompanied him, their movements suggesting military training. "Master Reynolds," Tommy reported as they entered through the secure back entrance. "These men needed to speak with you. They said it's about Operation Ghost Walker." The code name sent subtle ripples through Marcus's awareness. Only a handful of people knew about that mission, all of them with high-level military clearance. The 2 men moved with the careful precision Marcus recognized from his special operations days. Their breathing patterns and muscle tension revealed extensive combat experience, but also a deep respect for the situation. "Chief Reynolds," the first man spoke quietly, using Marcus's former rank. "General Mitchell sends his regards. We've been monitoring the situation here." Marcus's enhanced senses detected no deception in their tone or physiology. These were legitimate operators, probably from his old unit, sent to assess the escalating conflict. The Pentagon's interested in a local protection racket? His voice carried careful neutrality, while his other senses continued tracking the cartel's movements outside. "We're interested in why the Sinaloa cartel suddenly deployed 3 former Israeli Sayeret Matkal operators to Phoenix," the second man replied, "along with several $1 million in specialized counterinsurgency equipment. They're treating this like a major military operation, Chief, the kind that usually involves national security concerns." Sarah's tactical gear rustled as she adjusted her position, maintaining clear lines of fire while monitoring the Academy's security feeds. "They're setting up some kind of specialized sensor grid around the perimeter," she reported. "Looks like the same equipment used to hunt enhanced operators in South America." The implications hung in the air like smoke. The cartel wasn't just escalating. They were implementing protocols designed specifically for countering operators with superhuman capabilities. Colonel Vega had studied the reports from Afghanistan, understood that he faced something beyond conventional military threats. They've been analyzing your patterns, the first operator continued, his voice carrying professional assessment. The way you move, how you detect threats, your operational methods. They think they've identified weaknesses in your perception. His tone suggested he knew better. They haven't figured it out yet, have they, that the blindness isn't a limitation? Marcus moved with fluid grace to the Academy's security console, his fingers dancing across controls with practiced precision. The sophisticated systems he'd installed weren't just for defense. They were tools specifically designed for someone who had learned to fight beyond normal human limitations. They're about to learn an expensive lesson about true perception. Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus detected the cartel's new teams deploying their counterinsurgency equipment. They moved with professional precision, establishing a sophisticated detection grid around the neighborhood, but their reliance on technology revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of what they faced. General Mitchell has authorized full support if needed, the second operator offered. We can have a tactical team here in 4 hours. This doesn't have to be a solo operation anymore, Chief. The offer carried genuine concern, but also respect for Marcus's capabilities. I appreciate the offer, Marcus replied, his voice carrying the quiet certainty that had once made him Special Operations' most effective ghost. But bringing in a tactical team would just escalate the situation, put more civilians at risk. Besides, he allowed himself another slight smile. They're expecting a military response. They've prepared for conventional warfare. They haven't prepared for what I've become. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just learning to adapt to blindness. He'd evolved, developed capabilities that went beyond what military technology could counter or comprehend. While Colonel Vega's teams relied on sophisticated equipment and tactical doctrine, Marcus had learned to perceive the world in ways their sensors couldn't detect. They're deploying their elite hunters, Sarah reported, monitoring the cartel's communications through intercepted signals. 3-man teams using some kind of specialized tracking equipment. Vega's implementing a professional manhunting protocol. Her voice carried both concern and anticipation. This is going to get interesting, isn't it? Marcus moved with deadly purpose toward his specialized equipment cache. The tools he'd modified for his unique capabilities had been maintained with obsessive precision, ready for exactly this kind of escalation. They want to hunt a ghost. His voice carried the calm certainty that had once made hardened Taliban commanders fear the dark. Let's show them what real hunting looks like. The morning sun continued its climb over Phoenix as Marcus prepared for counteroffensive operations. The cartel had brought in professional hunters, equipped them with cutting-edge technology, given them every advantage modern military science could provide. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought they were hunting a disabled veteran who had learned to cope with blindness. They hadn't realized they were facing someone who had transformed darkness itself into a weapon. Phoenix's morning traffic carried unusual tension as the neighborhood awakened to a transformed landscape. Marcus's enhanced senses detected significant changes in the community's normal rhythms. Through subtle vibrations and acoustic signatures, he tracked multiple surveillance teams maintaining professional observation positions. The cartel's presence had evolved from simple intimidation to sophisticated military occupation. They've established checkpoints on every major approach, Sarah Chen reported, her police training evident in her precise observations. 4-man teams using civilian vehicles as cover. They're logging everyone entering or leaving the neighborhood. Through their secure communication channel, she transmitted updated intelligence from her network of trusted officers, departments, calling it a community safety initiative. They've got official support now. Marcus absorbed this information while his other senses mapped the tactical situation. Colonel Vega had implemented a professional containment strategy, using the cartel's political influence to legitimize their military operation. Local businesses reported mysterious health code violations, sudden tax audits, insurance complications. Bureaucratic warfare coordinated with tactical precision. The Rivera family's grocery store failed another inspection this morning, Miguel Garcia reported, his voice carrying controlled anger as he entered the academy through the secure back entrance. Third time this week, health departments threatening to revoke their license permanently. His heartbeat revealed deep concern for his fellow business owner. Maria saw men in suits visiting the school board office. They're questioning the academy's youth program certification. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus tracked Tommy and Maria Garcia's approach. The siblings moved with the careful awareness he'd trained into them, following indirect routes to avoid surveillance. But their usual confidence carried new tension. The cartel's psychological operations were affecting even his most resilient students. "They're targeting everyone connected to the academy," Tommy reported as they entered, his young voice struggling to maintain composure. "Coach Brooks got pulled over 3 times driving home yesterday. Police found problems with his vehicle registration. Dad's restaurant suppliers suddenly can't make deliveries. Their trucks keep having mechanical issues." Marcus moved through his morning routine with deliberate precision, each motion serving multiple purposes as his enhanced senses continued gathering intelligence. The cartel's elite hunters had established a sophisticated sensor grid around the neighborhood, using military-grade equipment to monitor movement patterns. But their reliance on technology revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of what they faced. They're implementing standard counterinsurgency protocols, one of the special operations observers noted professionally, isolating the target, disrupting support networks, applying pressure through legitimate channels, classic psychological warfare combined with tactical containment. His voice carried grudging respect. "Vega's running this like a military campaign." Sarah's tactical gear rustled as she adjusted her position near the academy's reinforced windows. 2 more businesses closed this morning, the hardware store and the bakery. Both had surprise visits from federal agents. Something about licensing, irregularities. Her police training helped her recognize the pattern. They're systematically dismantling the community's infrastructure. Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus detected subtle changes in the neighborhood's electronic environment. The cartel's surveillance teams had upgraded their equipment, deploying sophisticated monitoring systems designed to track non-visual signatures. They were adapting their approach, trying to counter his unique capabilities through technological superiority. "The community's scared," Miguel continued, his restaurant owner's perspective providing crucial insight into local sentiment. "Not just of violence anymore. They're afraid of losing everything through legal means. The cartel's lawyers are as dangerous as their soldiers." His voice carried the weight of someone watching his neighborhood transform. "People are talking about selling, moving away before things get worse." Marcus processed this information, while his other senses continued mapping tactical developments. Colonel Vega was implementing a comprehensive strategy, using the cartel's resources to attack through multiple vectors: physical intimidation, economic pressure, bureaucratic warfare, all coordinated through professional military precision. "They're trying to force a confrontation," the second Special Operations Observer analyzed, "using the community as leverage, hoping you'll make a mistake under pressure." His tactical training recognized the sophisticated approach, but they still haven't figured it out, have they? Why the Taliban called you Ghost? Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in captivity, just learning to survive without sight. He'd discovered that true power often came from understanding deeper patterns, the rhythms of human behavior, the subtle signals that revealed intention, the ways fear and courage shaped community dynamics. While Colonel Vega's teams focused on tactical superiority, Marcus had learned to perceive the true heart of conflict. "Remember what I taught you about community?" Marcus asked Tommy and Maria, his voice carrying the calm certainty that had once guided special operations teams through impossible situations. "About how true strength comes from supporting each other." The siblings' heartbeats steadied as they recalled their training. "They think they can isolate us, break us down individually. They haven't understood what we've built here." Through the academy's walls, Marcus detected increased activity at the Cartel's command center. More vehicles arriving, equipment being deployed, professional operators establishing new tactical positions. Colonel Vega was committing serious resources to this operation, treating the neighborhood like a military objective that needed to be secured. "They're escalating systematically," Sarah reported, monitoring intercepted communications, bringing in more contractors, expanding their surveillance network. Vega's implementing some kind of specialized hunting protocol. Her voice carried professional concern, tinged with anticipation. "This is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it?" Marcus moved with fluid grace toward his equipment cache, his enhanced senses painting a detailed picture of the tactical situation. The cartel had transformed his neighborhood into a sophisticated battle space, using every advantage money and military expertise could provide, but they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought they were fighting a tactical war against a single operator. They hadn't realized they were facing a community that had learned to see beyond surface appearances, to understand that true strength comes from supporting each other through darkness. And Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent 7 years building this academy just to watch it fall to enemies who couldn't comprehend the power of united purpose. The afternoon sun cast harsh shadows across Phoenix's transformed streets as Marcus detected a significant shift in the tactical situation. His enhanced senses registered new electronic signatures at the cartel's command center, suggesting the arrival of specialized equipment. Through subtle vibrations in the ground, he tracked multiple teams deploying what appeared to be next-generation sensor arrays around the neighborhood's perimeter. "Something's changed," Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel. Her police training evident in her analysis. "Vega's teams are implementing new protocols. They're using some kind of advanced detection system I've never seen before." She paused, reviewing intercepted communications. "They're calling it Project Eclipse. Whatever it is, they're confident it can counter your capabilities." Marcus processed this information while his other senses continued mapping the evolving battle space. The cartel's elite hunters had adjusted their tactics, moving with increased precision that suggested new intelligence. Their confidence patterns had shifted, indicating they believed they had acquired a crucial advantage. "They found something in Afghanistan," the first Special Operations Observer stated quietly, his voice carrying professional concern. "Medical records, research data from your captivity period. Someone's been studying how your other senses developed, trying to understand the biological mechanisms behind your capabilities." The implications hung in the air like smoke. "They think they found a way to neutralize your advantages." Through the academy's walls, Marcus detected Tommy Garcia approaching with unusual urgency. The boy's heartbeat carried a rhythm of controlled fear, suggesting he had encountered something significant. He wasn't alone. Maria's presence accompanied him, along with another familiar signature that made Marcus's enhanced senses sharpen with recognition. "Master Reynolds," Tommy called as they entered through the secure back entrance, "we found something bad." The siblings had brought Dr. Sarah Wilson, the community's trusted physician who had helped many veterans through rehabilitation. Her medical experience had proven invaluable in understanding how Marcus's other senses had evolved during his captivity. "They're using neurological disruption technology," Dr. Wilson reported professionally, her voice carrying both scientific precision and personal concern. "I recognize the equipment they're installing. It's based on classified research into sensory enhancement, the same studies that documented your adaptation to blindness." She moved closer, her heartbeat revealing deep worry. "They're planning to overload your enhanced senses, turn your greatest strength into a devastating weakness." Marcus absorbed this revelation while maintaining his calm exterior. His fingertips detected subtle changes in the Academy's environment. New frequencies in the air, unfamiliar vibrations suggesting the activation of sophisticated electronic warfare systems. Colonel Vega was implementing a strategy specifically designed to counter his unique capabilities. The technology was developed for counter-terrorism operations, the second Special Operations Observer explained, his tactical training helping him understand the implications. It creates targeted sensory interference patterns designed to overwhelm enhanced perception abilities. Against a normal operator, it would be ineffective. But for someone like you, whose other senses have evolved beyond normal human limitations, it could be devastating, Dr. Wilson finished, her medical knowledge filling in the tactical assessment. The system doesn't just jam enhanced senses, it turns them against the user. Every advantage you've developed could become a source of debilitating pain. They're trying to transform your greatest asset into your most critical vulnerability. Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus tracked the deployment of this new threat. The cartel's teams moved with professional precision, establishing a sophisticated network of neurological disruption devices around key locations. Their pattern suggested a carefully planned operation designed to trap him within a web of sensory warfare. "They're not just trying to find you anymore," Sarah analyzed, her police experience helping her recognize the strategic shift. "They're creating an environment where you can't effectively operate. Every movement, every enhanced perception would expose you to potentially crippling feedback." Her voice carried grim understanding. "They're turning the entire neighborhood into a weapon against your capabilities." Marcus moved through the academy with deliberate purpose, his other senses painting a detailed picture of this new tactical reality. Colonel Vega had escalated beyond conventional military operations, implementing technology specifically designed to counter enhanced human abilities. But in doing so, he had revealed something crucial about his understanding of the situation. "They still think this is about tactical advantage," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the calm certainty that had once made him Special Operations' most effective ghost. "About superior technology and military doctrine. They haven't understood the most important lesson from those 82 days in captivity." He moved toward his equipment cache, accessing specialized tools maintained for exactly this kind of escalation. "What lesson?" Tommy asked, his young voice steady despite the tension surrounding them. The boy had absorbed more than just physical training during his time at the academy. He had learned to see beyond surface appearances, to understand deeper truths about strength and adaptation. "The true power doesn't come from enhanced senses or tactical superiority," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across sophisticated controls with practiced precision. "It comes from learning to operate beyond normal limitations, from understanding that every perceived weakness can become a source of unexpected strength." His voice carried the quiet authority that had once guided hardened operators through impossible situations. "They think they can use technology to neutralize my capabilities. They haven't realized that the blindness was never my true advantage." Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just developing enhanced senses. He had discovered something far more valuable: the understanding that true adaptation goes beyond physical capabilities, that the most effective weapon is the ability to transform apparent disadvantages into unprecedented strengths. Colonel Vega had committed significant resources to countering his enhanced perception, but in doing so had revealed his own crucial weakness. "They're experts at fighting what they can understand," Marcus continued, his movements carrying deadly purpose as he prepared for counteraction. "At using technology and tactical doctrine to overcome known threats, but they've never faced someone who has learned to operate entirely outside their framework of comprehension." A slight smile crossed his face, one that would have been familiar to his former special operations teammates. "They think they can use my enhanced senses against me. They're about to learn why some advantages can't be measured by conventional metrics." The afternoon sun continued its arc across Phoenix's sky as Marcus prepared his response to this new threat. The cartel had escalated to neurological warfare, bringing in classified technology and professional operators to counter his unique capabilities. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They thought they were facing an operator who relied on enhanced senses. They hadn't realized they were dealing with someone who had learned to transcend normal human limitations entirely. The late afternoon sun cast lengthening shadows across Phoenix as Marcus initiated his counter-preparations. His enhanced senses mapped an increasingly complex tactical environment as Colonel Vega's teams continued deploying their neurological disruption network. Through subtle vibrations and acoustic signatures, he detected sophisticated equipment being installed at strategic points throughout the neighborhood, creating an invisible web designed to target his enhanced capabilities. "They're establishing a 3-layer containment grid," Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel, her police training helping her analyze the cartel's deployment patterns. "Outer perimeter focuses on surveillance and detection. Middle layer contains the neurological disruption devices. Inner circle consists of their elite tactical teams, ready to move once the technology compromises your abilities." Her voice carried professional concern mixed with tactical assessment. "They're creating a sophisticated trap, Marcus." Through the Academy's walls, Marcus tracked multiple conversations as key community members gathered in response to this escalation. Miguel Garcia's steady heartbeat suggested controlled anger as he described increased pressure on local businesses. Dr. Wilson's precise medical terminology outlined potential countermeasures against the neurological warfare devices. The special operations observers contributed tactical analysis based on their experience with similar technology. "The system operates on predictable frequencies," Dr. Wilson explained, her medical knowledge providing crucial insights. "It's designed to create overwhelming sensory feedback, targeting the specific neural pathways that developed during your adaptation to blindness. But like any technology, it has limitations. The human brain is remarkably adaptable, capable of developing new patterns in response to external pressure." Marcus absorbed this information while his fingers danced across specialized equipment. He'd maintained for exactly this kind of escalation. Years of preparation had gone into developing countermeasures against potential threats, but this situation required a fundamentally different approach. The cartel wasn't just trying to find him anymore. They were attempting to transform his entire operational environment into a weapon against his capabilities. "They're implementing a phased activation sequence," Sarah reported, monitoring intercepted communications from the cartel's command center. "Starting with low-level interference patterns, gradually increasing intensity. Vega wants to ensure the system doesn't just incapacitate you. He wants to understand exactly how your enhanced senses work, to document their limitations." Her tactical training recognized the methodical approach. "He's treating this like a military research operation." Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus detected Tommy and Maria Garcia helping to coordinate community response efforts. The siblings had absorbed more than just physical training during their time at the academy. They understood the importance of unified action in the face of sophisticated opposition. Their movements carried purposeful efficiency as they helped establish secure communication networks and evacuation protocols. The technology has another vulnerability, the first Special Operations Observer noted, his experience with classified systems providing valuable insight. It requires precise calibration to maintain effective coverage. Any significant disruption in their deployment pattern could create exploitable gaps. His voice carried professional appreciation for the tactical complexity involved. But accessing those gaps would mean operating within the interference field, exposing yourself to potentially devastating sensory feedback. Marcus moved through his preparation sequence with deliberate precision, each action serving multiple purposes as he readied himself and his students for what was coming. The cartel had escalated beyond simple intimidation or conventional military operations. They were implementing sophisticated technological warfare designed specifically to counter his unique capabilities. But in doing so, they had revealed something crucial about their fundamental approach to the situation. They're thinking linearly, Marcus observed, his voice carrying the calm certainty that had once made him Special Operations most effective. Ghost Operator, treating this like a conventional military problem. Identify the target's capabilities, develop countermeasures, apply overwhelming force. They haven't understood that true adaptation goes beyond simple cause and effect. Dr. Wilson's medical expertise helped her grasp the implications. The brain's neuroplasticity means it can develop new pathways, find alternative methods of processing sensory information. During your captivity, you didn't just enhance your other senses, you fundamentally rewired how your mind interprets reality. Her voice carried both scientific precision and deep understanding. They're trying to overload specific neural pathways, but they can't predict how an adapted brain might respond to such pressure. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus tracked increasing activity as the community mobilized according to carefully prepared contingency plans. The cartel had expected to isolate him, to cut him off from support networks, and force him to face their technological trap alone. They hadn't understood that his true strength came not from enhanced senses, but from building a community that understood the power of united purpose. "Remember what you taught us about pressure?" Tommy asked, his young voice steady as he helped coordinate evacuation preparations. "About how it either breaks you or forces you to evolve." The boy's training had gone beyond physical techniques to encompass deeper understanding of adaptation and resilience. "Every limitation is an opportunity," Marcus replied, his fingers checking specialized equipment with practiced efficiency. "Every pressure point becomes a potential source of new capability. They think they can use technology to neutralize my advantages, force me to operate according to their tactical framework." A slight smile crossed his face as he detected the first activation signals from the cartel's disruption network. They haven't realized that true ghost warfare isn't about enhanced senses or tactical superiority. It's about learning to exist entirely outside conventional parameters of operation. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just developing superhuman perception. He had discovered something far more valuable. The understanding that true power comes from transcending normal limitations entirely, from learning to operate in ways that enemies cannot comprehend or counter. Colonel Vega had committed significant resources to neutralizing his enhanced senses, but in doing so had revealed his own critical vulnerability. The sun continued its descent toward Phoenix's horizon as Marcus completed his preparations. The cartel had transformed his neighborhood into a sophisticated battle space, using classified technology and professional operators to create what they believed was an inescapable trap. But they'd made one fundamental miscalculation. They thought they were dealing with an operator who relied on enhanced senses to compensate for blindness. They hadn't realized they were facing someone who had learned to turn conventional limitations into unprecedented advantages. Night descended over Phoenix as Colonel Vega initiated his operation. Marcus detected the activation sequence through his enhanced awareness, sophisticated electronic signatures powering up in a carefully coordinated pattern around the neighborhood. The neurological disruption network hummed to life, creating an invisible web of sensory warfare designed specifically to counter his unique capabilities. Full activation in 3 minutes, Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel, monitoring the cartel's communications. They're implementing a systematic power increase, starting from the outer perimeter and moving inward. Tactical teams are moving into position, establishing containment protocols. Her police experience helped her recognize the professional precision in their approach. Vega's coordinating everything from the command center personally. Through the academy's walls, Marcus tracked multiple tactical teams taking predetermined positions. Their movement patterns suggested extensive military training, each unit maintaining precise spacing and professional discipline. The cartel had committed significant resources to this operation, bringing in elite operators from various specialized backgrounds. The interference field is stabilizing, Dr. Wilson observed, monitoring sophisticated medical equipment she had brought to analyze the neurological disruption effects. They're using a modulated frequency designed to create escalating feedback in enhanced sensory processing centers. The technology is remarkably sophisticated, military-grade, possibly even beyond current classified systems. Marcus maintained his calm exterior while his enhanced senses mapped the evolving tactical situation. The cartel's disruption network was creating subtle changes in his perception, attempting to overwhelm the neural pathways he had developed during his adaptation to blindness. But where they expected to find vulnerability, he had prepared for unprecedented adaptation. First wave approaching the academy, Sarah reported, her tactical training evident in her precise observations. 3 teams, full combat gear, using the interference field for cover. They're moving with confidence. They think the technology has already compromised your capabilities. Her voice carried professional concern mixed with grim anticipation. This is it, Marcus. They're coming for a direct confrontation. Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus detected Tommy and Maria Garcia coordinating with community members from secure positions. The siblings had implemented emergency protocols with practiced efficiency, ensuring civilian evacuation while maintaining crucial communication networks. Their training had prepared them for exactly this kind of sophisticated opposition. The interference pattern is reaching critical intensity, the first Special Operations Observer noted, his experience with classified systems providing valuable tactical insight. Normal enhanced perception would be completely overwhelmed by now. They're expecting you to be severely compromised, possibly incapacitated. His voice carried professional appreciation tinged with curiosity. But you're not even flinching. Are you? Marcus moved through his final preparation sequence with deliberate precision, each motion serving multiple purposes as he readied himself for direct engagement. The cartel had implemented sophisticated technological warfare, transforming his neighborhood into a battle space designed to neutralize his advantages. But in doing so, they had revealed fundamental misconceptions about the nature of true adaptation. Remember what you learned about pressure points? Marcus asked Sarah as the tactical teams approached their final assault positions. How targeting a specific vulnerability can become an opportunity for unexpected counterattack. His voice carried the calm certainty that had once made him Special Operations' most effective ghost operator. "They're thinking conventionally," Sarah replied, understanding dawning in her tone, "and trying to overload enhanced senses, force you to operate within normal human limitations. They haven't realized you've moved beyond conventional sensory frameworks entirely." Her tactical training helped her grasp the strategic implications. "You're not just compensating for blindness anymore, are you?" Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus tracked the final approach of Vega's elite operators. Their movement patterns suggested absolute confidence in their technological advantage, expecting to find a compromised target, struggling against overwhelming sensory interference. They hadn't understood that true ghost warfare transcended simple enhancement of existing capabilities. "Contact in 30 seconds, Sarah reported, monitoring multiple tactical frequencies. They're implementing a synchronized breach protocol, multiple entry points, coordinated with maximum intensity from the disruption network." Her voice carried professional assessment of their approach. "It's a well-planned operation, Marcus. Against a normal enhanced operator, it would be devastatingly effective." Marcus allowed himself a slight smile as he detected the subtle signs of imminent assault. The Cartel's teams had established textbook positions for a professional tactical operation, their confidence supported by sophisticated technology and extensive military training. But they had made one critical miscalculation in their fundamental approach to the situation. "They think technology can force me to fight according to their tactical framework," Marcus observed quietly, his enhanced awareness tracking every minute detail of the approaching confrontation. "They haven't understood that true adaptation means learning to operate entirely outside conventional parameters of engagement." The assault began with professional precision. Multiple breach points were initiated simultaneously, coordinated. With a surge in the neurological disruption field's intensity, the Cartel's elite operators moved with lethal efficiency, expecting to find their target compromised by overwhelming sensory interference. Instead, they encountered something their sophisticated technology and tactical doctrine hadn't prepared them for. Marcus moved like liquid shadow through the chaos of the breach, his movements guided by understanding that transcended normal human perception. Where they expected to find vulnerability, they encountered unprecedented adaptation. Each attempt to exploit his supposed weaknesses became an opportunity for devastating counterattack. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just learning to enhance his remaining senses. He had discovered something far more valuable, the understanding that true power comes from transforming conventional limitations into sources of extraordinary capability. Colonel Vega had committed significant resources to neutralizing enhanced perception, but in doing so had revealed his own crucial vulnerability. The initial confrontation flowed through the academy with deadly grace as Marcus systematically dismantled the Cartel's elite tactical teams. Their sophisticated technology and professional training proved ineffective against an opponent who had learned to operate beyond normal human frameworks of engagement. They had come expecting to hunt a compromised target. Instead, they found themselves facing something their advanced systems couldn't measure or counter, a ghost who had mastered the art of turning darkness itself into an unprecedented advantage. The aftermath of the initial confrontation cast heavy silence over Phoenix's transformed streets. Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus tracked the Cartel's rapid tactical reorganization, Colonel Vega had withdrawn his surviving operators to defensive positions, their movement patterns suggesting both professional discipline and profound uncertainty. The sophisticated neurological disruption network hummed with adjusted frequencies as they attempted to understand their technology's failure. "They're implementing emergency protocols," Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel, monitoring multiple tactical frequencies. Vega's ordered a complete reassessment of their operational approach. 3 more vehicles just arrived at the command center. Looks like they're bringing in specialized consultants. Her police experience helped her recognize the significance of their response. They're not just adjusting tactics anymore. They're fundamentally reconsidering their understanding of what they're facing. Through the Academy's walls, Marcus detected increased activity as the Special Operations observers analyzed the confrontation's aftermath. Their professional assessment carried both admiration and concern as they studied how he had systematically dismantled the Cartel's elite tactical teams. The neurological disruption technology, designed to incapacitate enhanced human capabilities, had proven ineffective against something that transcended normal operational parameters. "The medical data doesn't make sense," Dr. Wilson stated, reviewing sophisticated monitoring equipment with scientific precision. Their technology should have overwhelmed any known form of enhanced sensory processing. "But your neural patterns show no sign of disruption or compromise. It's as if you're operating on a completely different framework of perception." Her voice carried both professional fascination and deep concern. "They're going to escalate dramatically, aren't they?" Marcus maintained his calm exterior while his enhanced senses mapped the evolving tactical situation. The Cartel's remaining operators had adopted defensive formations that suggested serious reassessment of their capabilities. Through subtle vibrations and acoustic signatures, he detected new equipment being deployed, even more sophisticated technology brought in to counter what they now recognized as an unprecedented threat. "Multiple teams establishing new positions," Sarah reported, her tactical training evident in her precise observations. "They're implementing some kind of layered containment strategy. Electronic signatures suggest experimental military hardware, stuff that shouldn't even exist yet." Her voice carried professional concern, mixed with grim anticipation. Vega's not just escalating the technology anymore. He's changing his entire operational doctrine. Through his enhanced awareness, Marcus tracked Tommy and Maria Garcia coordinating community response efforts from secure locations. The siblings had demonstrated remarkable adaptation to the evolving situation, maintaining crucial communication networks while ensuring civilian safety. Their training had prepared them to support operations that went beyond conventional tactical frameworks. "They're bringing in something new," the first Special Operations observer noted, his experience with classified systems providing valuable tactical insight. "The electronic signatures don't match any known military pattern. Whatever Vega's implementing, now it's beyond anything we've encountered before." His voice carried professional assessment tinged with warning. "They're not trying to counter enhanced senses anymore. They're preparing to engage something they don't fully understand." Marcus moved through his preparation sequence with deliberate precision, each motion serving multiple purposes as he readied himself for the Cartel's inevitable counter-response. The initial confrontation had forced them to recognize that conventional military doctrine and sophisticated technology weren't sufficient against an opponent who had learned to operate beyond normal human limitations. But their response revealed something crucial about their evolving approach to the situation. They're shifting from tactical superiority to systematic containment, Marcus observed quietly, his enhanced awareness tracking multiple layers of new deployment patterns. "Instead of trying to directly neutralize my capabilities, they're attempting to create an environment where those capabilities become irrelevant." His voice carried the calm certainty that had once made him special operations most effective. Ghost operator, they still haven't grasped the fundamental nature of true adaptation. Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus detected increased vehicle movement as the cartel committed more resources to their operation. Colonel Vega had recognized that he faced something beyond normal military parameters, but his response remained grounded in conventional thinking. More technology, more operators, more sophisticated containment protocols, all attempting to force an unprecedented threat into understood tactical frameworks. They're establishing some kind of quantum detection grid, Sarah reported, monitoring intercepted communications with growing concern. The technology they're deploying, it's theoretical stuff, Marcus. Systems designed to map and counter, capabilities that shouldn't be humanly possible. Her tactical training helped her recognize the implications. They're not just trying to find you anymore. They're trying to understand exactly what you've become. Marcus allowed himself a slight smile as he detected the subtle electronic signatures of the cartel's new technological deployment. Their response to the initial confrontation revealed both professional adaptation and fundamental misunderstanding. They had recognized that conventional military doctrine wasn't sufficient, but their escalation remained tied to technological superiority and tactical containment. They think they failed because their technology wasn't sophisticated enough, Marcus stated, his enhanced awareness tracking every detail of their evolving strategy. That more advanced systems and containment protocols will let them counter whatever capabilities I've developed. They haven't understood that true ghost warfare isn't about superior technology or tactical advantage. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in Taliban captivity just developing extraordinary capabilities. He had discovered something far more valuable, the understanding that true power comes from transcending normal frameworks of operation entirely. Colonel Vega had committed even more sophisticated resources to containing and countering his abilities, but in doing so, had revealed his own persistent vulnerability. The morning sun began its climb over Phoenix's horizon as Marcus prepared for the cartel's renewed offensive. They had escalated beyond conventional military technology to experimental systems designed to counter capabilities that defied normal human limitations. But they'd made one critical miscalculation in their response to the initial confrontation. They thought they were dealing with an enhanced operator who had developed extraordinary abilities. They hadn't realized they were facing someone who had learned to exist entirely outside their understanding of what was possible. The morning light revealed Phoenix's transformed landscape as Marcus detected a remarkable shift in community dynamics. Through his enhanced awareness, he tracked dozens of coordinated movements throughout the neighborhood. Where the cartel expected to find isolated targets, they encountered unified resistance. Local business owners, students, and residents had begun implementing sophisticated counter-surveillance protocols, turning their intimate knowledge of the area into a tactical advantage. Something extraordinary is happening, Sarah Chen reported. Through their secure channel, monitoring multiple frequencies simultaneously. The community isn't just supporting your operation anymore, they're becoming an active part of it. Every attempted cartel surveillance position is being compromised by civilian countermeasures. Her police experience helped her recognize the significance of this development. They're using everything you've taught them, Marcus. Every lesson about awareness and adaptation. Through the Academy's walls, Marcus detected increased activity as key community members coordinated their efforts. Miguel Garcia had transformed his restaurant into a sophisticated communication hub, using his business contacts to gather and distribute crucial intelligence. Dr. Wilson had established a medical support network, preparing for potential casualties. While analyzing the cartel's new technological threats, the Special Operations Observers provided tactical guidance, helping civilians understand how to effectively counter professional military operations. The cartel's surveillance teams are reporting significant disruption, Sarah continued, her tactical training evident in her analysis. Simple things: delivery trucks parked to block observation posts, construction work interfering with sensor placement, community events creating crowds that disrupt their patterns. Vega's professional operators are being consistently outmaneuvered by civilians who know their neighborhood. Marcus maintained his focused awareness while tracking these coordinated community actions. His students had absorbed more than just self-defense techniques. They had learned to understand their environment as a dynamic system, to recognize how small actions could have significant tactical impact. Through subtle vibrations and acoustic signatures, he detected dozens of seemingly innocent activities that systematically undermined the cartel's sophisticated operation. "They're adapting the principles you taught us," Tommy Garcia reported, coordinating youth activities that consistently disrupted cartel surveillance patterns. About how awareness isn't just about seeing threats. It's about understanding how to change the environment itself. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had learned to transform everyday actions into tactical advantages. Even the kids' soccer games are making their sensor grid malfunction. Through his enhanced perception, Marcus tracked Colonel Vega's growing frustration as his professional operation encountered unprecedented civilian resistance. The cartel's sophisticated technology and trained operators were being consistently compromised by a community that had learned to operate beyond conventional tactical parameters. Every attempt to establish control was met with coordinated, seemingly spontaneous responses that disrupted their carefully planned protocols. The quantum detection grid is experiencing significant interference. The first Special Operations Observer noted, monitoring the cartel's advanced systems. Their theoretical technology requires stable conditions to map enhanced capabilities, but the community's activities are creating too much environmental noise. They can't get clean data. His voice carried professional appreciation for the elegant simplicity of this counter-strategy. They've brought in experimental military hardware, only to have it defeated by neighborhood soccer games and impromptu street fairs. Marcus moved through the academy with deliberate precision, coordinating community efforts while preparing for the cartel's inevitable escalation. The initial confrontation had demonstrated that sophisticated technology couldn't counter his enhanced capabilities. Now the community was showing that unified purpose could overcome even the most advanced military doctrine. But this success would force the cartel to consider more desperate measures. "They're calling in additional resources," Sarah reported, intercepting encrypted communications from the cartel's command center. Vega's requesting authorization for extreme measures, the kind that risk civilian casualties. He's arguing that the entire community has become part of the tactical opposition. Her voice carried both pride in the community's effectiveness and concern for their safety. "Your students aren't just supporting you anymore, Marcus. They've become genuine tactical assets." Through the floor's vibrations, Marcus detected Tommy and Maria coordinating another wave of community activities. The siblings had demonstrated remarkable skill in organizing seemingly chaotic civilian actions into sophisticated counter-surveillance operations. Every parent picking up children, every delivery driver making rounds, every street vendor setting up shop became part of an organic resistance network that consistently disrupted the cartel's professional protocols. "Remember what you taught us about community?" Maria asked, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who understood deeper tactical principles. How true strength comes from people working together, each contributing their unique capabilities. The young girl had grasped something fundamental about the nature of effective resistance. That's what's happening now, isn't it? Everyone using their normal activities to create something the cartel can't counter. Because Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent 7 years running a martial arts academy just to teach physical techniques. He had built a community that understood how to transform everyday actions into tactical advantages, how to use intimate knowledge of their environment to counter sophisticated opposition. Colonel Vega had committed experimental military technology and professional operators to his operation, but he faced something beyond conventional military parameters. The morning continued to unfold as Marcus coordinated this unprecedented civilian resistance network. The cartel had expected to isolate and eliminate a single enhanced operator. Instead, they encountered an entire community that had learned to operate beyond normal tactical frameworks. Every sophisticated system they deployed, every professional protocol they implemented was consistently undermined by civilians who had learned to see their neighborhood as a dynamic battle space. They had made one critical miscalculation in their escalation of technological warfare. They thought they were fighting an individual with extraordinary capabilities. They hadn't realized they were facing a community that had learned to transform ordinary activities into remarkable tactical advantages. And Marcus Reynolds hadn't spent those 82 days in captivity just learning to transcend his own limitations. He had discovered how to teach others to recognize that true power comes from unified purpose and adaptive response to sophisticated opposition. The afternoon sun cast harsh shadows across Phoenix as Colonel Vega initiated his final offensive. Marcus detected the implementation of extreme measures through his enhanced awareness as the cartel deployed their remaining resources with desperate intensity. Multiple tactical teams moved with coordinated precision, supported by experimental technology that hummed with ominous electronic signatures. The quantum detection grid pulsed with increased power as they committed fully to their last attempt at containment. They're abandoning all pretense of legitimate operation, Sarah Chen reported through their secure channel, her voice carrying professional concern as she monitored multiple tactical frequencies. Vega's received authorization for unrestricted engagement. They're preparing to use military-grade suppression protocols in a civilian area. Her police experience helped her recognize the implications. They're not just targeting you anymore, Marcus. They're treating the entire community as hostile opposition.